From the headquarters of Dallasio English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South, and I am Soini Gray. Despite attacks from both the Guatemalan and Mexican police, a second migrant caravan has now succeeded in crossing into Mexico. After being blocked on Sunday, they struggled to cross the Suchiate River in a desperate attempt to flee to Honduras to reach the United States. To flee Honduras, actually, to reach the U.S. Some could be seen carrying their children into the water as police officers waited for them on the Mexican shore. Mexico's federal police deployed a helicopter to try and stop the migrants from crossing into the river. The activists have condemned these actions as it raises the risk of migrants drowning. Our correspondent Pablo Perez is by the river and he sends this update.
Well, we're standing on the Mexican shore of the Rio Suchiate. This is the river that divides Mexico from Guatemala, and we're among the hundreds of mostly Honduran and Guatemalan, Salvadorian migrants that take part of what is now called the second Migrant Caravan. They are asylum seekers just as the first one, and after several days of waiting and the rejection by the Mexican authorities of letting them in through the official way, through the international bridge, they choose to take the river, and they walk for this river is about 200 yards wide, and in some points it's quite deep. So we got to see families with small children braving the current of the river, and finally they are on the Mexican side, and they got received by the immigration authorities, those with the white shirts, and Policía Federal, the federal police force that the last few days they got a struggle with at the border bridge. Now their migration status is uncertain yet. They can ask for refugee or asylum in Mexico, which is something they say they don't want to do because they want to keep on their trip up north to the United States border. But we're still waiting to see what is the reaction by the immigration authorities, the Mexican immigration authorities, and what is the decision taken by the big contingent of migrants. It's over 1,200 people. They are now chanting their national anthem, Honduran national anthem, and they say that it's like a sign for them of their victory after braving the waters of the river, the international river. We'll keep on informing, and we go back to you now.
But one member of the second caravan was killed at the Guatemala-Mexico border on Sunday. 26-year-old Henry Diaz was hit in the head by a rubber bullet. The Mexican security forces shot at a group of migrants as they tried to rush the border fence. Several others were injured. Diaz died on his way to hospital in the Guatemalan border town of Tecún-Umán.
He was shot with a rubber bullet, which can actually cause such a wound. We can't confirm the time he died, but we can confirm it was this wound that caused his death.
Further north, the main group of the migrant caravan is continuing towards the United States. They have not reached the town of Santiago Niltepec in the state of Oaxaca, after a stop at Tepanatepec.
During the last stop, migrants waited in long queues to receive the money their relatives sent them from the United States and their home countries.
Our family sent money for us to keep our march going. With the money, we can take transport because we have to walk a lot, and there are many single mothers in the group.
However, the majority of people eat what the Mexican people have to offer them. In Panapatepec, for instance, migrants ate bean tamales and green sauce for breakfast.
People from different towns cooked tamales for us and brought them for us today. Local women, men, and children have helped us.
Despite the hot weather and tiredness, people remain positive and patiently wait instructions to continue their march towards the next stop. Some people use the time during their halt to clean their clothes and take bath in the closest river.
We want to thank Guatemala and the good people from Mexico who have supported us with food, water, soap, doctors, and clothes for our kids and us.
Meanwhile, the medical teams continue to provide treatment to migrants who got sick or got wounded during the long walks, especially people who have feet injuries.
And another group of migrants is also trying to join the caravan in Mexico. About 500 people have begun their own journey from El Salvador. Early on Monday, they crossed into Guatemala. Our correspondent in San Salvador, Inés Alvaros, brings us more.
On Sunday, a group of approximately 450 Salvadorans gathered to migrate to the United States. They started their journey walking from the center of San Salvador to the border with Guatemala at the west of the country. Even though they started on foot, several vehicles helped transport them, and they arrived at the border in the afternoon. Processing them at the border was fast, because migration authorities were prepared for their arrival. Despite the fact that they were accompanied by the police, lifeguards, and members of human rights organizations, the authorities still advised the caravan to proceed cautiously. Borders are now more militarized like never before because of the Honduran caravan that started on October the 13th.
The U.S. Department of Defense has announced that they're sending 5,200 soldiers to the border with Mexico to try and stop the caravan of Honduran migrants. The department has also said they want to enhance the security of the United States by stopping the caravan. Brazilians are coming to terms with their new far-right president-elect Jair Bolsonaro, who won a sweeping victory in Sunday's runoff election. He was elected president with 55% of the votes. Hernando Haddad of the Workers' Party received 45%. There are mixed reactions. Some have welcomed the results, saying change was needed, while others are fearful.
These elections in reality have revealed the worst of mankind. They have shown the soul of human being. Everything they have spoken about has been revealed during these elections. That is how I feel about it. And I feel sad, really sad, but we are going to move forward.
As the results came through, supporters of Jair Bolsonaro celebrated with fireworks in Rio de Janeiro. Thousands of people gathered outside his home to congratulate him. The military also took to the streets to celebrate his win.
Now this country is going to move forward because of my captain, my president. He's not homophobic, he's a man of God. He's a man of character. He's not corrupt. He will fight for all Brazilians because for him, there are no gays, lesbians, blacks or whites. We are a group. We are all united.
In his victory speech, Jair Bolsonaro said he plans to turn Brazil into a great, free and prosperous nation.
We will liberate Brazil and the foreign ministry from the ideology of its international relations that has subjected Brazil to recent years. Brazil will no longer be different from other countries of the developed world. We will seek bilateral relations that add to the economic and technological value of Brazilian products. We will restore international respect for our dear Brazil.
Riot police were deployed to quell protests after the far-right candidate won the election. People took to the streets of Rio de Janeiro and riot police fired tear gas upon protesters in Sao Paulo. Protesters yelled, "Ele now or not him." Many Brazilians are concerned that Bolsonaro will not respect civil rights, human rights, civil liberties and freedom of speech.
I am in mourning, not for me, but for Brazil, which doesn't deserve this. It doesn't deserve this ignorance. The Brazilian people are ignorant. Brazil owes a lot to Lula.
Earlier, we asked our correspondent in Sao Paulo, Brian Mayer, about the military support of Bolsonaro.
The military is 100% behind Bolsonaro. You know, he's planning on appointing 3 generals to cabinet positions, and his vice president is a military general. So we interpret this as almost as a return to military rule, really.
Bolsonaro supporters also gathered outside the prison in Curitiba, where the former president Lula da Silva is in jail. They let off They lit off fireworks and chanted "Lula, stay in prison." Then they staged a mock funeral for Lula and his Workers' Party. The founder of the PT is serving a 12-year sentence for alleged corruption, but he is still seeking to prove his innocence. During the campaign, Jair Bolsonaro said he'd let Lula rot in prison. The U.S. President Donald Trump has called Jair Bolsonaro to congratulate him on winning Brazil's presidency. Bolsonaro will in turn thank Trump in a post via Twitter. He said he wants to bring these two great nations together, saying, "Together we will make progress on the path of freedom and prosperity." Time for a short break. More news in a minute. Welcome back. A court in Quito has rejected the WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange's lawsuit against the Ecuadorian government. During the hearing, Assange gave testimony via a video link. He said that it's been 7 months since he's been able to speak with his children, as the Ecuadorian government cut his communication. He said that the conditions of his asylum have been violated. To discuss this topic further, we are now being joined on the phone live by Eric Vole. Eric is a geopolitical expert and a political advisor. Hello, Eric. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hello. It's a pleasure to be talking to you.
Lovely. Now, how do you react to the news that the court in Quito has rejected Julian Assange's request for his rights to be respected?
Well, I think we all know what the root cause of this is. This is not really about the strength or lack of strength of the lawsuit presented by Assange and his extremely renowned lawyer, the former judge, Dr. Garzón. This is all about the tentacles of the U.S. government reaching into the Ecuadorian justice system, which really lacks the sufficient independence in order to shut down the legitimate claims of Julian Assange, whose rights are being violated as we speak, as they have been for the last 6 years.
So, Eric, are Assange's fears of Ecuador revoking his asylum and handing him over to the United States justified?
Well, we still, as far as I know, we still don't know that his asylum is being revoked, but it seems like he has reasonable grounds to fear such an outcome. And that would be a huge blow, not just to WikiLeaks, not just to Julian Assange, but to the freedom of speech in the Western world. I mean, we've been used to seeing violations of, or considering violations of the freedom of speech and human rights as a phenomenon of tropical dictatorships. But what we're seeing now is that even a Western citizen like Julian Assange, brought up in Australia, being persecuted in the most brutal manner in order to shut down what has been WikiLeaks' core activities, which is about publishing necessary, important information about the activities of a world power like the U.S. I mean, WikiLeaks has revealed corruption, probable war crimes, violations of international law and human rights committed by the world's most powerful government. And this sends a clear message that such activities are no longer permitted.
So if he is ordered to leave the embassy, what do you think will be next for him? And does he have any legal resources left?
In terms of legal resources, if he's forced to leave the embassy, he would be probably arrested by the British government. So then it would be up to the British judicial system. I mean, the British judicial system is usually considered more reliable than the current Ecuadorian judicial system. But there are great reasons to fear that in a case of such magnitude in terms of geopolitical importance as the Assange case, then those geopolitical considerations, meaning the links to the United States, the interests of the United States, might overrule the rule of law. And that is why Assange has his reasons to fear such an extradition, even though the British government are now promising not to extradite him to the US.
Thank you so much for speaking to us, Eric. We appreciate your insight on this. Other news now, Mexican President-elect Andrés Manuel López Obrador has announced that construction of Mexico City's new international airport will be stopped. The decision comes after citizens voted in a referendum to decide whether construction of the airport should continue. Obrador said that his government would heed the word of the people. The funds would instead be invested into building new airstrips for a military base outside of the city. The airport project had long been marred in controversy, from corruption allegations to concerns about its environmental impact.
Because of this wise decision made by the citizens, the federal government will save around 100 billion pesos. We will work to resolve the problems at the current airport in Mexico City.
There will now be weekly non-stop flights from Russia to Jamaica. The measure came as Russian tourists no longer need entry visas to stay in Jamaica for up to 90 days. The first flight by Russian airline Norwinds was welcomed on Friday with 300 tourists on board. It's been 13 years since UNESCO declared Venezuela free of illiteracy. Education programs launched by the late Commander Hugo Chavez helped the country achieve this goal.
Carmen is 67 years old. Along with Orlando, she arrives early in the morning, motivated to study. This is her classroom, and although it's small, it has all the resources they need to learn.
I just learned how to write and read. I'm also learning maths, history, and science. I have learned a lot here in Robinson Mission, but I want to learn more.
Students are taking classes on Venezuelan history, geography, math, and literature.
When I was young, it was very complicated for me to have an education. My mother was really poor, and we all went to clean buildings. As I became older, around 16, I couldn't go back to school. After the revolution came, I finally had the opportunity to resume my education again.
Island is also part of this program. In 2008, she became part of Mission Robinson, when it was just a pilot program aimed at teaching millions how to write and read.
We have helped so many people with this program. They arrive from places that you can't even imagine, saying they want to resume their studies. They say they couldn't before since they didn't have the money.
This program has served as an example to other countries.
It's important to highlight that these programs have 70% investment rate. Other countries cut back their investment in public education, so students have to pay for their education. In Venezuela, we have protected free education.
Almost 2 million people have graduated from this program since it first started. This was an initiative launched by the late commander, Hugo Chavez.
Germany's Angela Merkel has announced that she would step down as the Chancellor at the end of her fourth term in 2021. She has been in power since 2005. The announcement came following weak performance by her centre-right party, the Christian Democratic Union, in recent elections. She has also said she would quit as the president of the CDU she has been leading since 2000. Merkel has been a dominant figure in the European politics for more than a decade. Pope Francis has denounced the attack on a Pittsburgh synagogue in which 11 people were killed. The attack happened when a shooter burst into the Tree of Life synagogue and fired at the worshippers. The Pope spoke to pilgrims in St. Peter's Square after Mass and called for eliminating hotbeds of hate.
Dear brothers and sisters, I express my closeness to the city of Pittsburgh in the United States of America, and in particular to the Jewish community stricken yesterday by a terrible attack on the synagogue. May God welcome the dead in His peace, comfort their families and support the wounded. All of us in reality are wounded by this inhumane act of violence. May the Lord help us to put out the hotbeds of hate that flare up in our societies, strengthening a sense of humanity, respect for life, moral and civil values, and the holy fear of God, who is love and Father of all.
Leicester City fans have paid tribute to the owner of the football club who was killed in a helicopter crash in the United Kingdom. Vijay Shivardhana Prabha was among 5 people aboard the helicopter when it crashed into flames after a Premier League match on Saturday. He was popular with supporters after buying the poor-performing club in 2010. It then went on to win the Premier League title in 2016. Fans laid shirts and flowers outside the stadium in tribute to him.